Hello there, this is Josh Howlett, and here in this video I'm going to show you what I learned from creating the hits by a car effect on Adobe After Effects. So I already knew about masking, layering and tracking, and as you can see on this layer here, I tracked out every single frame of the shot and selected all around the body of the car and all around the shadow. And on top of this I created a feather, which I knew what it did but I didn't realise how effective it was. So as you can see, with the feather, the shadow and the actual car itself looks realistic. It looks like it's actually part of the video, not a layer imported on top of a clip of me running across the road. But you see, if I take off the feather, it clearly is sharp around the edges, it doesn't look smooth, and it's clearly not realistic. So with the feather, obviously it made it look as if the car was actually in the scene. So that is one technique that I learned, a technology that I learned how to use. And then another technology that I learned how to use is rotoscoping. So as I said, I had to mask out every single layer of the car, which took ages, and I thought I was going to have to do it for my character here, Agent James Miller, as well, to be able to move him off the screen and rotate him to look like he's going over the bonnet of the car. But obviously, as I said, I learned how to rotoscope. So instead of masking out, clicking on every single part of my body, masking out like that, I learned that rotoscoping would select a certain region that matches the colour. And by this I mean, as you can see, if I go onto the rotoscope brush, I've selected all around my person. I just clicked on my person, I just drew around my person like this, and then it selects a rough estimate of what you're trying to select. And once you wait for it to load, it thinks that I'm trying to get all of this into the image as well. So if we go back to the composition, you're going to see all the green stuff that we've selected, which obviously that doesn't look good and that doesn't look realistic. So going back to the rotoscope brush and editing it, if you just press Alt and just swipe on certain areas, it removes them from the rotoscope, and from there on you can just select to a tight mask around your body, and then once you've done that, you have this, which then looks realistic. And then by simply changing the position and the rotation, meant that I can make it look as if I was rotating over the bonnet of the car, as you can see here. But obviously that is too unrealistic, and as you see, as I go frame by frame, also that's going through the sorry, I'm on the wrong thing. As you can see, if I go through frame by frame, if I go backwards, I start to move over the car and I start to turn more. So obviously I have moved the layer down, so that looks unrealistic. It's meant to be up a little bit. But also using motion blur as well, I realised how important it is into making it look realistic. So as you can see, my leg is here, and there's a blur around it, and just a blur around my car, around the car and the person himself, and that made it not look as sharp. And by that I mean, if I had the exact layer of the car and the exact layer of the person hitting each other, it clearly wouldn't look realistic. If I take the motion blur off, you can see that is what it looks like with the blur, and that's what it looks like without the blur. And without the blur, it looks too sharp, and it's hard to describe what I mean. But if I just press Ctrl Z and I turn off motion blur, like fully, you can see it looks really sharp and realistic and really defined, and it clearly doesn't look like I'm getting hit by a car. But then if I turn the motion blur back on, it looks as if I'm going so fast and the car's hitting me, I'm being swiped off the screen. So I learned how to rotoscope, I learned how to feather, and I learned how to use motion blur to make certain scenes more realistic. So they are three technologies that I learned from creating the hit by a car effect.